and Laura, oh, there we go, our recording just started. And Laura is our elder care coordinator, and she is a very unique individual, and we value her so much here at our firm because she truly brings a different perspective to our elder law practice. So Laura is had a very extensive career prior to coming to us. And in her role as an elder care coordinator here at the firm, her job is 100% and exclusively to ensure that our client and their family get the best care possible at all stages of life and at illness once we are retained. And also to support not only the aging or the sick loved one, if that's the case, but also the family and the caregiver surrounding them. So Laura's job, very different from us as attorneys, but her job and her role is just providing and ensuring that the person and the family get the best care. So in terms of some housekeeping matters here today, we are here to talk about aging in place, how to do it, what that means, where to do it, all that good stuff. The webinar will run approximately 45 minutes. We're going to, hopefully, as questions pop in, please feel free to drop your questions in the question and answer box. And we're going to try to reserve 15 minutes at the end for any questions that come through. This webinar is being recorded, so feel free to circle back to that after this if there's some information that you would like to hear again. Okay, let's see, make sure I didn't miss any housekeeping matters. Okay, so let's jump in. Okay. What is aging in place? Everybody wants it, but what does it actually mean and how do you achieve it? So Laura, let me ask you this question. We're going to start with the basics. There's kind of different elements of this plan, but let's start with where can somebody age in place, or where might somebody want to age in place?
Well, there are several scenarios. It could be a single family home where you've been living for a long time. You could downsize to a smaller single family home. Multi-family homes like a condo or an apartment. It also could be an independent living community like the Atrium, the Village at Gainesville here, or Okamic, where you have independent living. And if you need extra supports, you can always bring in extra supports into those independent living scenarios.
See, that's such a great perspective, because even for myself, I think I had, prior to engaging with you and learning from you, taken aging in place as meaning the only option is to stay at home. Whereas what you're saying is, the options aren't just stay at home or go into a facility. There's some middle ground that we can find. So oftentimes people don't want, to keep up with the grass or keep up with the cleaning of a big house, but they're not ready and they want to maintain their independence. So skilled nursing isn't necessarily where the appropriate level of care is. But some of these other places, let's talk about that for a minute. So if you're in an independent living situation, what kind of support can you perhaps bring in to make that option a great option or a possible option?
You could make some changes to your existing place to make it safer and more accessible. You can bring in care to get help with your daily activities. It's important to keep up with your health to make sure you don't decline more and ignore things and create more problems. It's also important to pay attention to your emotional and your social well-being. Keeping friends, family, keeping yourself engaged, that's part of it. And then there's always technology that you can bring into where you're living to make it safer.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. So what you're kind of talking about now, where we're segueing is to the how. So the where is your home, a home within like a bigger family, with you're living with your kids or other family members, and then this independent living. But now let's talk about the building blocks to actually make any one of those options possible. One thing, I want you to highlight one more time exactly the building blocks for a plan. So there's 6 or 5, I think, buckets. So what are those buckets that we need to know?
So making your home safe. Bringing in care. paying attention to your own health, also emotional health and well-being and social well-being, and then bringing in and also respite would be included in that, because you do need some respite to stay emotionally and socially and physically well, to care for somebody else. And then also technology, to bring in technology to make your home more safe.
Yes. And I think also there's a financial component as well.
Mhm.
So any of these things that we're talking about, obviously for some of them, there is a cost associated. There's a cost to making improvements or accommodations in your home. There's a cost to bringing in caregivers. There's a cost to upkeeping a house or making that move into independent living. So I don't want to go too far down the path of exactly the financial part portion of this and how we can go about getting Medicaid, simply because about a month ago we did a webinar on Medicaid and various things on how you can qualify and tips and tricks. So certainly refer back to that for a deeper dive. But just as a something to keep at the back of your mind as we're talking about aging in place, when the time comes, yes, we can help somebody apply for Medicaid long-term care, which is an entitlement. But we can also, when somebody is at home or needing a level down of care that's not necessarily skilled nursing, there's home and community-based services Medicaid, and then there's Med Waiver in certain facilities. So again, I don't want to go too far down that train of thought, but just understand that there's more information out there on those things. And then also there's something to be said for being able to sit down, with your family and everybody being on the same page and getting out a spreadsheet and saying, pre-planning, not just planning in the middle of a crisis, but pre-planning. How can we make this work for our family? Whether it perhaps includes Medicaid, whether it's some other insurance policy that you may have, or if it's private paying, any of those options can be possible. So let's go back more to the care-centered approach to aging in place. So Laura, when you meet with a client, where are you first meeting with them and what are you looking for?
Okay. I typically meet with them wherever they're living, whether it's in their home, maybe they're in a short-term rehab stay. But in order to complete the assessment, I do need to see where they're planning to stay, because I do need to look at things like their home. I mean, that's kind of the first thing I look at, is what kind of hazards might be in the home, or what kind of improvements can you make to make you be able to safely stay at home or apartment, condo, wherever you're at.
Right. So you're doing an in-home, whatever that home means, assessment of where they are living and what level of care they're getting, right?
Right.
Okay. So now let's break that down further, because we can probably get into a little bit more detail under these buckets. So in terms of home accessibility and safety, what are some things that people can plan for or look for to make it safer for them to stay home longer?
Well, the first thing that I see is when I approach the home, are there stairs? How many stairs can we put in a little ramp? What kind of things can be made to access? Are the doorways wide enough to accommodate a wheelchair? When you come in, are there rugs scattered throughout the house? Because sometimes people trip on rugs, or it's difficult to navigate with a wheelchair over rugs or through rugs. So those are things that I look at right away. After I meet with them, I talk with them, I ask to see where they're, what bathroom they plan to use, so I can look at the bathroom. And I'm not an expert in accessibility, actually occupational therapists are. So if we bring in somebody like that can really recommend equipment, but I do have a background in it and home modifications so that you can widen doorways.
I think that though, even just that perspective, like, okay, at face value, these are the things that we can put in place, but even the knowledge to say an occupational therapist can, even depending on what we need to do here, can come in and consult on, more of the specifics, or if there is really more needed. Even just the foresight or the understanding that that's where you go for that information, right?
And basic too, back to basic when I first get there, is this a 2-story home? Is there a bedroom on the bottom floor? Do we need to move to a single level home? That would be an option to move so that you have the accommodations that are accessible to you.
Right.
So that's important too, because if not, You can do stairs, you can put in an elevator, you can put in a chairlift, but those are things that, they might break, and it leaves you stranded. So, a single family home is always best if you can do that.
Let's talk shower for a second. If there were a couple of things that might make showering a little bit easier for somebody, what would those be?
A roll-in shower. It would not be a tub.
Mm-hmm.
You can buy, tub benches. However, getting in and out of a tub is sometimes difficult. It can add to the falls. But a roll-in shower with grab bars is ideal, especially if you end up in a where you can't walk and you have to roll in somebody on a shower chair.
A shower chair. That's another great idea, so that we're not slipping and falling on wet tile.
Right.
Excellent. All right. So now let's go to the next level or element of the plan, and that's going to be help with daily activities. So what does that mean? Why, like when you say somebody needs assistance with daily activities, what daily activities are we talking about?
That would be from when you get up in the morning, take your medications, eat breakfast, have your meals, move around the house, transferring from the bed to, say, a walker, wheelchair safely, laundry, everything, your household chores. What happens when somebody is the caregiver for somebody else, that child or that wife or husband, they end up being caregiver instead of husband, wife, or child. And we hope that you could bring in services so it puts you back in your original role of husband, wife, or child, and you're not becoming just a caregiver to that person.
See, that's such a great perspective because, we're here talking about how to make something accessible and help somebody with the activities of daily living. But your perspective is also, let's assist so that we can make everybody's experience in this aging process a good one, so that we don't have burnt out caregivers, so that we have, we can support family relationships and not just have people in their little worker bee roles.
Yeah.
What about
even before that?
Yeah.
Some of those supports can be paid and some can be unpaid. You may have friends at church who could come in and bring you meals. So it's kind of like when I meet with people, I explore all the options just to kind of think about things. Maybe you have a lot of children around who could take turns. However, at some point when things progress, you've got those people get tired too.
Yeah.
So you really most people need to move to having some paid supports because people need to sleep at night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. I think also some of the other activities of daily living, like even groceries and cleaning and medication reminders and
transportation to the doctors. It depends on how healthy both the people are. We can coordinate transportation. People that come in and help with meals, a lot of them can also provide that transportation.
Where are some of the places that you might look to getting some private in-home care? Like, what are some of where could somebody go to find something?
We gather a list of people that we know in the community that do that. Most of the care for just your daily activities is not going to be covered by Medicare or Medicaid unless you move to a waiver. And those coverages are minimal. Most people end up paying for private pay for the activities of daily living, the chores and that kind of stuff. And we have agencies around that we know about that can come out. There's many that you could choose from. And I always tell people, interview, don't just stick with one, interview, go with who you think you like the best. And you can always change. You don't have to stay with somebody if there are issues.
So the day-to-day, it's a bit of a puzzle, I think, right? Because I don't want to go too far down the Medicaid waiver path or the home and community-based service, but just so that everybody understands, because you said unless you get the waiver. So the waiver is a Medicaid med waiver. And for that process, and there's an extensive interview that has to take place. And based on the answers to those interview questions, the individual gets ranked on a scale. I think is five is going to be the most.
I'm not sure what they're doing right now.
Okay. So you rank on the scale, whatever the scale is for their med waiver purposes. And so long as you're ranking relatively high in terms of need for care, then you get on this list, and then from that list, you're going to qualify for a particular number of hours of care in the home. But what Laura's also saying is that even if you qualified for med waiver, that may not be care for some of these other activities.
It may not be enough.
Right.
And there's a limited amount of providers too. And so it's usually not an answer, but it's a help.
Yeah.
It doesn't cover everything, but it does help.
For sure. And then some of the other places, like you said, to look for private help would be certain agencies that have people that are
like home health,
home
companions,
health.
Medical companions. The private pay is usually just medical companions. It's when you need more services like in-home health care, where you get the nurse, you get the OTs, the PTs, and some help with your bathing and those kinds of things.
Perfect. Okay, so the next thing that I want to talk about is when you say you're assessing and you're hoping to achieve the best possible health, what does that mean?
It means paying attention to your health, especially for the caregiver. Often we see the caregiver doesn't take care of themselves and they end up, I won't say crashing, but they end up with more health issues in the end because they haven't paid attention to themselves. They stop going to their medical appointments. They put off all their medical appointments because all the focus is on the person who isn't as healthy. And so it's also for even this, both of them need to pay attention to maintaining contact with family, friends, and try to do hobbies and things that keep your brain working. And once you're sick, it's a lot of focus turns into the medical and paying attention to the doctors, and the other things go off to the wayside, and you become not as happy and not as well-rounded as an individual.
Yes.
And respite.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of trickles down and more into the emotional, social, and respite. What is respite care?
Respite is either bringing somebody into your home or taking someone somewhere else so that the caregiver can relax.
So this is like a caregiver centered assistance.
The whole idea of respite is to give the caregiver a break.
Okay. And like, do you have to apply for that? How does that, is it available to anybody?
Yes. There are a couple of facilities, assisted living facilities in Gainesville area, and I'm sure in other areas that have respite beds. You pay by the day. You pay by the night. Some have a minimum, so many days. If you wanted to go on vacation somewhere, you could use the respite bed for a week. There are also day respite, things like Al's Place.
Yes.
You could drop somebody off and do your grocery shopping or go to the gym, pick them back up on your way home, and it lets you have some time to yourself.
Yes, so important.
Yeah, there's a couple other small assisted living facilities in Gainesville that just do it by the hour. You pay by the hour, and it just gives you time to, even if you want to do your own shopping or go to the mall.
Let's just talk about this for a moment. So we've talked a lot about, I feel like we focused on somebody being at a pretty high needs or a high level of care required. But that's not all the people that you're meeting with, and that's not the point in which the plan for aging in place begins.
Right.
The plan for aging in place really needs to begin before any of that has occurred, right?
Yeah.
So, maybe it's at the beginning of a diagnosis before, things progress. Or maybe it's just to say, my family are out of state and I want to ensure that I've got, a plan around me to be able for me to live how I want to live without everybody having to say, you must go to a facility or something of the like, just because there's no local support.
Right.
So when you're meeting with people, and all of these buckets that you're assessing, I think it's important to just point out that you could be brought in at the very beginning, and what you're looking at can change over time.
Correct. Very true.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about how what you're seeing and what they're seeing might be a little bit different.
And so that goes back to having the best possible health. That's taking medications as prescribed. That's going to your routine screenings. That's addressing your emotional and health and social well-being too. That's like I said, staying involved with friends and doing hobbies, and just trying to live the best life while you're still healthy.
Yep.
You know, it's planning ahead. It's talking with your family, um, friends, and just planning for the future.
Yes,
You know,
absolutely.
just
Like
making sure.
aging in place doesn't just
Right.
happen. We
Right.
have to have these plans in place,
Right.
and that makes an extremely successful path forward.
Yeah. It's important so that your family or friends know what you want and how you want to age.
Mhm.
You know, it's because the if you don't share what you want, you don't share your goals, then other people don't know.
Right.
They
Absolutely.
can't help you appropriately if you don't share.
Absolutely. And I mean, there is one other kind of bucket again within the plan that is probably as technology has evolved and continues to evolve, can also be of assistance.
Mhm.
So, if we get to the spot where the level of care is high and we still want to maintain, aging in place but a safe way to age in place because we don't want fall hazards and, we can't solve all problems,
Mhm.
but we can plan as best as we can. So some of the other things that I think we have seen start to come out more and more are the use of cameras in the home. And I know that that sounds funny, but we
Mhm.
sometimes use them for our children when they're
Mhm.
young or our pets. And oftentimes, we've got them on our doorbells these
Mhm.
days, but we can also, in certain common areas or places where a risk of falling is high and somebody may not be there 100% of the time, it can give family or
Right.
caregivers the peace of mind to know, okay,
Yeah.
they actually are okay.
Right. You call them and they don't answer the phone. So you could look at the camera at that point. You don't have to have it on all the time.
Right.
You could look at the camera at that point and see, oh, they're on the floor or they're asleep.
Yes.
And that's why they didn't answer the phone.
So it's a check-in without having to drive across town necessarily or call somebody to do that
Mhm.
check-in. Whereas, before that
Mhm.
possibility, it would be somebody going and knocking on the door to make sure everything was okay. So it's possible, and there's inexpensive options for that. We also have talked about in the past medication dispensers. So how does that work?
There's different levels of medication dispensers. Instead of the little Sunday through Saturday
Yeah.
one, when you start losing track of what day it is, sometimes they'll take it on the wrong day. They don't do the morning one instead of the PM one. They have ones that have alarms on them. They have
Yep.
ones that will spin around and only dispense the medication that's for that time period, so that they're not taking medications at the wrong time. There's some that are actually wired to, like Bluetooth or
Yeah.
so that you can check and see whether they've taken it without going to their house. There's all different levels of that.
For sure. That's great. I think also sometimes I've seen and I've heard about families getting almost like a tablet that says in fairly big font like the date, the time, the temperature.
There's a clock.
Yes,
You can get a clock that'll tell you the day of the week
perfect.
and the date.
And sometimes I think maybe having that by the medication or just even at different places in the home to just continue to orient, the individual who needs it.
It's helpful in the bedroom when they wake up, they can see what time it is and what day it is.
Yes.
Is it AM or PM? Because sometimes they get the AMs and the PMs confused.
Certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about cameras and looking at falls, but even in spaces or if you don't have cameras, another option might be like fall detection.
The personal emergency response system.
Okay,
You can
what is
have
that?
it's a device that you've probably seen on TV.
Yeah.
I've fallen, and you hit the button. I fell. Some of them have fall detection. Some of them have GPS. There's a variety of them out there. There's some resources out there where it can help you decide which one you want and which one you need, and also which ones are available in your area.
Yep. So there are even some companies out there who are starting to integrate all these sorts of things, whether it's like medication tracking or blood pressure tracking or cameras, all that kind of stuff. We are also seeing some of these technologies and companies come out. So that's something that we can use now and something that's also going to probably be better and better as the years go on here. I also wanted to mention one other thing. And so sometimes a fall may occur, or an injury may occur, or a hospitalization for whatever reason might occur. And I also think, and Laura, you can weigh in here because you're the expert, getting somebody into a really great rehab and knowing where that great rehab is and advocating.
And knowing which ones not to go to.
Right. But I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but getting somebody into a really good rehab and getting them the therapy that they need can also support them aging in place. Because what do we see all the time? If they've gotten hospitalized and they get into a bad rehab situation, they never fully recover, so they cannot return.
Right, right.
So yeah.
Rehab is so important in getting the therapy that you need. Oftentimes when you're in rehab, the in-home therapy will follow you to the home to continue therapy for a few months. And that definitely will improve your chance of strengthening and balance and address all kinds of issues. The OTs can come in the home and show you how to perform your daily living activities safely.
And they're probably going to make recommendations even at that point in time to see if there's something else that could be helpful for the home and for what's going on, right?
Exactly, yes.
What are those belts called?
Gait belt?
Yes.
A gait belt.
So what are those?
A gait belt is a wide canvas belt that you put around somebody who's at fall risk, and you can hold that belt to help keep them stable and to help keep them from falling while they're walking.
So even things like that could be, you know, somebody coming out of rehab that we want to, you know, support and prevent additional falls. That might be something that might be helpful. Okay. So what I want to also just kind of finish off here is, so we've got a lot of care related suggestions and recommendations, but we also have the legal side of things that I believe is an integral part of being able to age in place. And that is really ensuring that you've got designated helpers, meaning powers of attorney, durable powers of attorney in place, a healthcare surrogate in place, a living will in place. Because if something should happen to you and you need somebody to step in for you, or even if you're just needing this help with your activities of daily living, we don't have to wait. If we wait for incapacity, we've waited far too long and there's nothing that can be done at that point outside of a guardianship. But ensuring that your planning is in place before a crisis situation, you're allowing your helpers that you trust and that you love, if it's a family member or even close friend, the legal authority to step in and support you, to help you with your financials, to pay your bills, to do Medicaid planning if needed and when the time comes, to care for your pets. And then we also have the healthcare side of things where we want to ensure if for whatever reason you're having trouble or the doctor doesn't think you can give informed consent, or it's a lot of information and sometimes another set of ears and eyes is necessary. We want to have somebody there and designated with the authority to help you in terms of healthcare matters. So I think in all of this planning, we definitely want to, assess home accessibility and safety. What is the assistance with daily activities that is required? Let's support your health and your emotional well-being. Discuss respite if necessary. Maybe bring in some of this technology. Financially plan and make a budget. But also part of this overarching plan to age in place must include some legal documents and ensuring that you've got a comprehensive estate plan. Part of all of this, when we put it all together exactly as I've described, is often where we have people come to us and ask for us to engage them in a life care plan, meaning that Laura follows the client and their family at year intervals. She gives care advice, healthcare advocacy, support.
I can help if they get hospitalized, to work with a discharge planner to try to get them into a rehab facility that they like if they need to do that, or to bring in services in the home just to go straight home from a hospital, whatever's needed.
Right. And then we've got kind of alongside that the legal side where we're going to get documents in place and kind of be there at every step of the way if healthcare advocacy is kind of bumping up against some roadblocks or some
Mhm.
challenges, we can often come in and help.
Mhm.
So it's all encompassing. I think we're approaching the 30-minute mark. I think, Laura, what do you want to kind of leave everybody with?
Just that there's no right way or one way to age in place. There are many options, and you can have whatever services or help is needed for you. And that any change in circumstance requires a new evaluation of what's needed. And somebody like me, an elder care coordinator, I can come in and help reevaluate the situation and make recommendations or bring in support that's needed other professionals.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Laura. You're a wealth of information that I continue to learn from. So let's see if there are any questions. I actually only see one question right now. So if there's anybody else that does have a question, feel free to drop it in there. So the question is, for individuals considering remodeling for aging in place, what age should somebody start considering the remodel?
Well, age. I'm not sure there's an actual age, but I would say, depending on if you have any underlying medical conditions, that could change the answer of what age. Um, I would say that people start seeing changes in their vision, their hearing, all that around 60. So I think as you're starting to retire or before you retire and you're still earning money,
Yeah.
you could plan ahead and start making those changes when you still have income to do so.
Right. And I think that's to put an age on it is difficult. I think
Mhm.
it's going to vary depending on what, factors are at play for you guys. But I think no matter what the beat of the drum is before you hit a crisis.
Right.
So, and I think part of that is pre-crisis planning that hits all of the buckets that we've talked about. Um, because another thing could be like, I don't want to stay in my big home.
Mhm.
So maybe instead of remodeling, the decision would be to downsize. And then if you are downsizing, maybe it's buying some place or whatever it is, with the idea that you can make it accessible and you can make it helpful if necessary.
And something I've heard too is to move into one of the communities before, while you still have time and the physical abilities to enjoy it. Places like Atrium or Village or Oakhammock, where they have amenities there for you to enjoy. They have pools and gyms, and if you wait till you can't enjoy it, it's not as enjoyable.
Yeah.
But those are things too to consider, is to um, make some changes before you need to, the pre-crisis.
Yeah, absolutely. The second question we have here is it's often asked and it's such a difficult question to answer. It's, the cost of services. But essentially the answer to that question is going to be, we need to have a conversation about it because we need to assess, what is needed. Are documents drafted? We have to look at them. Do we need to amend them? Who's involved? What stage in the aging in place or aging process are you in? What needs to be brought in? What assessments need to be done? So I think that's a hard question to ask or answer. So I apologize for being unclear, but it's really going to come down to, usually what we do is Laura and I or Shannon, we kind of bring everybody in terms of whoever the client is and their family, and we have a very open discussion, usually in this room, about what those needs are and how we can best achieve them and what options exist.
And every situation is different.
It is. That's why I'm sorry, it's such an incredibly difficult question to answer, but it's a good one. Okay, let's see. When you suggest individuals or agency for home assistant, who manages these people? So for example, if they don't show up, if they arrive late, don't show up, arrive late, they're ill, or they change, it's quite challenging to get reliable care. Yeah.
It is. That is a common problem across most agencies, and um, my job would not be to manage them. I usually give families the names of companies to try to interview. Like I said before, if you become dissatisfied, you don't have to stick with that person. You can change agencies if you want. The family manages them. They decide. You know, if you don't like a particular employee, you can let the agency know and they'll send out a different employee.
I think though, if we're running into, so the day-to-day management would be difficult for an elder care coordinator or a geriatric care manager, frankly, to be managing day to day. However, if we're running into repeat offenders where this situation is occurring again and again and again, and we can't remediate it, then I think that's when a call to us, and that's when we can step in to say, let's maybe try something different. Or I don't know, God forbid there's exploitation that has occurred. What can we do about that? So, I think it's a conversation about the big ones, but the day to day management is probably going to be with that caregiver, which is then where we say the support of the caregiver and the support of that family is important.
And sometimes you have what they call solo seniors.
Yeah.
Those are the ones who are aging in place and they do not have caregivers around them. That is when we might recommend a geriatric care manager who could visit, say, on a weekly basis and be more involved. My role here is to coordinate the care, and so that might be to recommend a geriatric care manager in some situations where they visit the family and manage issues on a more day-to-day basis.
So then maybe you have to correct me. Could a geriatric care manager, in theory, not an elder care coordinator, help with some of these daily issues?
Yeah, they would be, especially a solo senior. Usually, if it's a couple, one of them is able to do that. But if you have a couple that's not, then a geriatric care manager would come in, come into play there probably to ensure that everything's happening at the home on a daily basis like it should.
Wonderful. All right, so let's see, what else do we have? When you are aging in place with no family locally, how do you initiate and when do you ask for this kind of plan? So that is probably a more common scenario as the years go on, where we've got, family grew up in Gainesville, that was like their home base, and now, families are all over the country now, kids have moved. So this is almost, in the course of any given week, we've at least got a client or so with this situation. So what we do in that case is when usually there's something that, has triggered, like a retirement or a diagnosis or an event that they've seen go through other family members.
A fall,
yes. And so it can be the person that can be the actual client, the person who, whether it be the caregiver or the sick spouse, or just the couple, not sick,
or the children.
And then what we would do from there is we have this thing called an owl, and with the beautiful assistance of technology, we basically try to get everybody in the room physically or virtually to have that conversation. Because the plan is extremely comprehensive, it's great, but it also works best when we can be fully transparent and have everybody's input. So for kids or other family members or trusted friends that are in different places, they can call us if there's somebody locally that they want our help with, and then they can still be part of the conversation, and it'll be a video conference so that everybody can see everybody and try to get on the same page as much as possible.
And something that you made me think about is sometimes people are resistant to help.
Yes.
And we see that a lot. And so that's probably a topic for another webinar, is what do you do when somebody won't accept help and they need it?
Yes.
Yes. Because you can build a great plan, but if somebody won't accept help, that definitely it kind of throws a monkey wrench.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's see here. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anybody. Okay, do you recommend researching independent living communities even if aging in the home is the preferred situation? Absolutely. We always want to plan for contingencies, but the one thing I would say, and you can weigh in here, if the goal is to age in place in your home and you don't see the need to be in a facility for like more than 5 years, again, nobody has a crystal ball, but if that, hypothetically, I think what facilities are good and what facilities are maybe not so good changes fairly rapidly. I know that Laura kind of has a little list, based on our experiences and our interactions with the community as to where we would you know, kind of shepherd people to go or not. So I think it can change, greater 5 years from now, who knows? There could be something new, there could be something that has closed. So, oh, sorry.
It's okay.
That's okay. So I think it's always good to educate yourself, and it doesn't hurt to go look, because the other thing, going to look at some of these facilities, even if it's independent living, because that also said independent living communities, not just facility bound skilled nursing, then that can be part of your plan. What does it cost? Where do you want to be? Do you like this place? What is out there? So absolutely.
And the benefits of independent living is that things like meals can be prepared for you. You don't
Right.
have to worry about that. There's shuttle buses to grocery shopping. There's
Yes.
built-in things, fall detection devices that are
Right.
included in the cost.
Absolutely. Now let me just see. I think there's one more question here. Okay. So would you recommend agencies rather than private? I don't know.
I think that varies. It might be even good to have a mixture of both, because agencies have backups. Privates, sometimes you're their only job.
Yeah.
But when somebody is sick, if you have a private and it's just one person coming to your house and that person's sick, then you run into issues. So.
I think it's going to come down to really looking at how much care is needed, because having a private person, you build that rapport, you build that relationship, there's some comfortability that gets established. And if that person is sick or taking vacation, do you have a contingency plan in place to support that possibility? If the answer is yes, then maybe that's a great option for you. But if you're saying this individual needs round the clock care, and there's nobody else around, so when we need somebody reliable and we need a backup, then you may want to go with an agency. Or like Laura said, it's a combination depending on what needs to happen. But these are kind of the sorts of conversations that we would have with families to puzzle and guide and connect with resources, right?
Yeah. And you may start out with a private person who takes you grocery shopping once a week.
Right.
And then you add care in.
Yes, absolutely.
As needed.
Right. I think that's actually also extremely important. Just to reiterate, I know we said it before, but the solution today and the plan today is just that, a plan. But you're going to help make evaluations and assessments along the way, because the plan needs to ebb and flow and be appropriate at every given stage. Okay, there's maybe one or two last questions. Often people are reluctant to use walkers or canes when needed. Yes. Any suggestions?
Actually, I've personally experienced that with a family member, and I found out that there's a new device that's going to be available, hopefully within the next few months, that will attach to the walker, and you'll wear like a watch or something, and if you move away from it, an alarm goes off. So we're hoping that that might be useful for many people. That's the only device that I have found that is like that. So otherwise you could use cameras.
Yeah.
You can use a camera and then call into the house.
What about the alarms?
Alarms? Those are bed alarms and chair alarms, but there's no way to do that with a walker.
But at least if they're getting up.
Well, if they're standing, you know what I mean? But yeah, you could have a bed alarm to see that they got out of the chair. Yes. But they could still move the walker out of the way.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you see that they're away from their walker on a camera, you could call in there and say, Dad, get your walker. So
I also think your counsel, Laura, is often, or anybody's assistance, just somebody that is not family or the caregiver coming in and reinforcing the importance of that sometimes. Okay. It comes down to people being vetted who are going to, I think that was a follow-up to the prior question of, do you want somebody private or somebody in an agency? So the only other thing that I would comment on that is there are websites, like for example, I have heard people use something called care.com, where there's background checks available, and they are actually vetted, but they are a private individual. So it's not just getting somebody off the street who's come to you for a job interview. You're using these I'm sure that there are other ones.
They're
out there.
screened, and I think care.com has different levels of screening
Right.
too.
Right, so that might be something that could be helpful if you would like to have somebody private and not with an agency. Because I will also say this, just because somebody is with an agency does not make them bulletproof or issue proof. So I don't think it's as simple as, oh, they're with an agency, I can trust them. I think you always have to be cautious and alert and
See any
aware,
red flags?
right, aware of anything that's going on, and we can certainly be sounding boards for that. But yeah, so I don't think it's just one or the other. Okay. Oh, it's called care.com. I mean, I'm sure there are other ones out there, but that's just something that I've heard people say. We don't necessarily work with them directly at all or anything like that, but it was care.com. Anyways, I think that is the last of the questions, and we are at 11:47 today. So thank you all for joining us today. Again, this webinar was recorded, so we will send it out to you guys if there is information that you would like to hear again. And we will also be sending out a survey. We would really appreciate your feedback. We want to ensure that the information we're giving and providing is in fact useful. So the good, bad, the ugly, let's hear it. We want to make sure that we're giving you guys something that is actually useful.
And any suggestions for future topics?
Oh yes, excellent. Yes. What do you want to hear about? Love to hear that. So anyways, thank you all again. I'm Jenna and this is Laura, and thank you for being with us today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.